So what is a decorator? If you understand that, if you take that away from this video, that's a win. Because if you understand what a decorator is, why you should use one, then everything else is an implementation detail. So what is a decorator? A decorator is just something you use to decorate your functions, which sounds like a pretty useless definition. So a decorator is something you use to add useful functionality to your functions. For example, caching tends to be a useful thing. But usually, when you have functions that, query databases or perform computations, the purpose of those functions is to query the database or to perform the computations. It's not to cache those things. So the main focus of the function is to produce the results. The cache is just something nice that you put on top. And that's the point of the decorator, is to allow you to add this useful functionality to your function without having to pollute the function. So this is the core idea, it's the main idea. Now let's see this in action. I'm going to start by writing a function that accepts an integer. Let's say it's a non-negative integer. And if you know what this function does, that's great. And if you don't, that's also great. What matters is that this function is recursive and performs computations with some numbers. So you give it a number and you get the number back. That's all that matters. So for example, let's print the Fibonacci of 10. So now we run this and you get the 55. Now what's important about this function, and the reason I picked this example, is that this function can get pretty slow with fairly small numbers. So I'm computing Fibonacci of 40, and you can see that it's taking a while to compute the result. It's going to take roughly 10 seconds if I test the things correctly. And now you have the result. So what we want to do is we want to add caching to this function to make it faster. Now, because we're building up to decorators, I'm going to add the cache in an admittedly weird way. So what I'll do is I'll create a second function called cached Fibonacci. And this accepts the same number. And this function will store its cache in a dictionary called cache. And now what do we do? Well, if the argument n is in the cache, then we don't need to compute the result because it's already been cached, and so we just access the cache and return it. But if it's not, then we need to compute the result with the original function, because that's the function that knows how to compute things. Then we add the result to the cache, and then we return it. So this makes sure that the new result is cached. And now what we can try to do is we can try to compute the Fibonacci of 40 twice, and we will see that the second time will be essentially instantaneous. So we run this. It takes a while to compute the first result, but as soon as we get the first result, we get both, as you can see. Right. So we have this cached Fibonacci function, and it's maybe kind of weird that we did not insert the cache in the original function, but what I want to show you is that because we put it in a second function, the original function is here, it's isolated, and everything else, this logic, is independent of the function Fibonacci. It's just the caching logic. And that allows you to do something neat. So what I'll do now is I'll split the screen so that the cached Fibonacci is on the right, and so that I can work on something else on the left. So I'm going to delete these prints, and I'm going to write, let's scroll this further down, I'm going to write a factory of caches. So let's call this a cache factory. Because what am I doing here? The cached Fibonacci is adding a cache to the Fibonacci function, but again, the logic that adds the cache is independent of the function. So if I wanted to add caches to other functions following this same logic, I could abstract away the code that does this. So I'm writing a function that is a factory of cached functions. So the cache factory, so this is a factory of cached functions. A regular function goes in, and a cached function comes out. That's the logic of this function. So if this cache factory accepts a function, this must be the argument. It's the function that will be having a cache added to it. And the neat thing is that functions are objects in Python, so you can pass functions around. For example, if you've never seen this, or if this sounds weird, go take a look at the built-in sorted, which accepts a parameter key that allows you to sort by something else. That's going to take a function as an argument. So functions can be passed around. So this is the cache factory. And now what we do is we take this logic and we put it inside the cache factory. But we need to indent it. So the cache factory does exactly the same thing as the cache Fibonacci, except now I'm not caching the Fibonacci, I'm caching a general function. So we fix the name. So there's the cache here. This cached function is going to try to access the cache. If the value is not in the cache, it computes it from the original function. Again, this function is taken as an argument. And then we save the result in the cache. Now, the factory accepts some raw materials, the function, and must produce the cached function. So we return the cached function from this factory. And now notice, let's see if I can align the two sides. Notice how the left side and the right side, they look exactly the same. The only thing I changed was the name. So now we can get rid of this cached Fibonacci. And now we test the cache factory. So let's test the cache factory with our function Fibonacci. So the cache factory is here, it takes a function as an input. So what we'll do is we'll say that the cached Fibonacci is what you get if you take the cache factory and you pass it the original Fibonacci function. Let's close this right pane. And if this worked, then calling the cached Fibonacci of 40 is going to take a couple of seconds, but then the second call should be essentially instantaneous because the result has been cached. So let's give this a try. We wait for a couple of seconds in awkward silence. And there you go. The first result took a while to show up, but the second one was instantaneous because, again, the result is cached. And now what you don't know is that this cache factory, the cache factory you just implemented is a decorator. It's something that takes a function and adds useful functionality to it. In this case, it adds a cache. So this is a decorator. Now the thing is, usually in Python you see decorators used in a different way. In Python, you can use decorators with the @ sign, which makes it more convenient to use decorators. So let's see how that works. I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to take my cached factory, and I'm going to move it to the top of the file. Or rather, I'm going to take the Fibonacci function, and I'm going to paste it after the cache factory. So now, while defining the Fibonacci function, immediately above it, I can use the @ sign, and I can type the name of my decorator, which in this case is the cache factory. So the @ sign is the Python syntax to apply a decorator. Apply a decorator to a function. So let's see this in action. We're going to call Fibonacci on, let's do 38 because it's going to be slightly faster. Twice. So now we run Python decorators, and it took maybe it was too fast, so let's do 39. 39 might be the sweet spot for these demonstrations. So I'm going to run it now. See, so it took a second there, but oh no, it's just very fast because the cache is so much better. So now it's actually instantaneous always. So it no longer takes the 10 seconds. I keep forgetting about this. So it no longer takes the 10 seconds because the function is being cached so well that all of these recursive calls take a much shorter amount of time than originally because of the way this function works. It's actually the way this function works recursively. There's like a nice tree structure that is implicitly generated while you're computing everything, and that's why it took so long, because this tree gets huge. But because we're caching the function here, and we're caching it properly with the decorator, the tree doesn't expand nearly as much, and therefore Fibonacci 40 is pretty much instantaneous while it was taking a couple of seconds before. So this is proof that the decorator is working, the cache is working. Now, I've written here that the @sign is the Python syntax to apply a decorator to a function. But what does this mean? And what's important for you to realize, again, the nice thing or the key thing about decorators is not the @sign. It's the reason, it's the motive why you do this. You use a decorator to add something useful to a function. The @sign is just synthetic sugar to make it easier to apply your decorator, because before, you already used the cache factory. How did you use it? Well, you used it as an assignment. You did cached Fibonacci equals cache factory of Fibonacci. That's what you did before. And this is also applying the decorator, except that with the @sign, you preserve the original name. So it's as if you reassigned the function to itself. So using the @sign above a function definition, or writing this explicit assignment, is the same thing. In fact, let's delete this. Let's prove it to you. So never take what I say for granted. Test it yourself. And as you see, it takes virtually no time to compute the result. So it must be working. All right. It's just that the @sign makes it easier to see that your function will be decorated. Apologies. Yeah, so this is the key idea of a decorator. Now, let's take a look at something else. Let's write a generic decorator here. So a generic decorator looks like this. It's usefully, give it a better name than just decorator, but it's a decorator is a function that accepts a function that creates an inner function, which is going to wrap the original one. And in our case, it accepted a single number. And then you do something before calling the original function. You can do whatever you want. So let's say do whatever. Do whatever. Then usually you're going to call the original function. So result is going to be this. Then you do whatever you want after calling the original function. And then you want to return the original result from this wrapper. So these comments before and after calling the original function, you can think of them as hooks, quote unquote, that allow you to do anything you want. And then the decorator must return the wrapper, which is this new, modified, improved version of your function. So this is what the decorator looks like in general. There's a couple of things we want to change here, because this looks like the cache factory, but it only worked because the Fibonacci function accepted a single number. And in here, our wrapper is expecting a single number as well. But what if you want to write a decorator that applies to more generic functions, to functions that accept different numbers of arguments? Well, in order to do that, you need to be prepared to accept, you don't know how many number of positional arguments and whatever number of keyword arguments. And the way you do that in Python is by using *args and *quarks. So usually your wrapper function will look like this. And there's a final touch-up you can do. Because what's really going to happen is that when you do the application of the decorator, as you know, this is synthetic sugar for an assignment. And when you do the assignment, your variable is going to accept this new function. And this new function has this very generic name and this very generic signature. So what will happen is you will lose access to your function metadata. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to run this in interactive mode. So now I have access to the function Fibonacci, except it's not called Fibonacci, it's called cache factory dot stuff locals cached function. So you lose access to the metadata, and you can easily fix this in a very meta way by using a decorator. So to your decorator blueprint here, what you do is from functools you import, if only I could type, you import reps, and around your inner function you write this. You use the @sign, the reps that you just imported, and the original function as an argument. So this preserves metadata. So let's put this in front. Whoops. Like this. So this is your general recipe for a decorator. You won't always follow this recipe, but this is the main idea. So just to recap, a decorator is a function that accepts a function and builds a new function with improved functionality that adds useful behavior to it. In the case of this video, we added cache to a function. Now you can go and try to use this blueprint to write a logging decorator, for example, that adds logging whenever a function is called and whenever it returns something. So this is the key, the core idea behind the decorator. You apply decorators with the @ sign, but the @ sign is just synthetic sugar. The @ sign does not make a decorator. A decorator is something that exists in and of itself and that you can use without the @ sign. And then usually your wrapper accepts star args and star quarks so that it's ready to work with any function you might want to use your decorator with. You have a hook, you have space to do whatever you want before calling the original function. You call the original function and grab its result. Then you can do whatever you want after calling the original function and you return the original result. Sometimes you will modify the original result, sometimes you'll do something different. This is just a general blueprint you can use. And there's actually a lot more about decorators. If you're interested in learning more about decorators, I'm going to leave a link below that has a nice, let's call it a nice course about decorators that you can access. You can learn about using decorators with arguments, like you can see here, wraps. You can learn about using classes as decorators. You can learn about decorating classes, typing, how do you type decorators, how do you add type hints to these things. So there's a whole lot more to learn about. So I hope this is useful, and I'll see you around. Bye.